Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're checking out an out-of-print omnibus, and that is the West Coast Avengers Omnibus Volume 1. Now before we get started, I did want to briefly mention once more, my friend Jackson and I, we have a new Star Wars podcast, Beggars Canyon Boys. It's my introduction to Star Wars in its entirety. I never experienced it as a child, and I think it's pretty fun. So I'll leave a link for that below, and without further ado, let's check out this book. Here is the cover of the book, and we've got sort of a classic superhero action shot here, except with our West Coast Avengers, at least the starting members of the team, that is. Here is the spine of the book, nothing too crazy. It does say Volume 1, and there is a Volume 2, but that's also out of print. And then we have the back of the book, which has all the covers included in here, and it also says, "The action never stops in the Avengers Epic Expansion." Alright, so what material does this omnibus collect? Well, we've got West Coast Avengers, the 1984 4-issue limited series, Iron Man Annual Number 7, Avengers 250, and then West Coast Avengers, the ongoing 1 through 16, Vision and the Scarlet Witch, Issue 1 and 2, Avengers Annual Number 15, West Coast Avengers Annual Number 1, and materials from Avengers 239, 243, 244, skip 245, 246, and then also some material from Avengers West Coast Number 100. And as far as the creative team behind this book goes, this is all kicked off writing-wise by Roger Stern with that 4-issue limited series, and then after that, I believe Steve Englehart writes most of it. And for the art, we have Al Milgrom doing most of this, who I mostly really like. I think he's got like very clean lines, does anatomy well. Sometimes I feel like there could have been a little more experimental flair with things. And sometimes the way he draws specific characters strikes me as very odd. The one that's immediately coming to mind, and she's not super prominent in this book, but she does show up, it's Mystique later on, and I feel like he just does a very strange drawing of Mystique. Overall, though, I do enjoy sort of the creative synergy between Englehart and Milgrom. So, I just felt the need to say that, but don't let that detract you from maybe checking out this material, because I do think it's very fun stuff. So this is a run that utilized a lot of underutilized characters, but honestly, since this run came out, a lot of them have grown into much bigger comic book names. And I know I wasn't around back then, but I could see this series being kind of a big deal also because there was really only one mainline Avengers title at the time as far as Avengers stuff went, and this is the first time where two ongoing Avengers titles were coming out at the same time. But let's talk about that actually, what this book is and why there is a West Coast Avengers. So basically the start of West Coast Avengers is facilitated because Secret Wars happened, and the current chairperson of the team, which was the Wasp, she was off in Battleworld along with many other core members of the Avengers. And so while she was gone, the Vision became the acting chairman, which, by the way, it was interesting to me thinking about this, like, oh, Vision was not brought in to fight in the first Secret Wars. That means they probably weren't interested in selling Vision toys, since the first Secret Wars was basically just to sell a bunch of toys. I guess he wasn't as popular as he's grown today. Well, I guess that's a given. Many of these characters were not as popular as they've grown today, as I've stated. But anyway, this book starts with Hawkeye and Mockingbird coming into the Avengers mansion. Vision is in charge. Hawkeye and Mockingbird just married. Also important to note, not included in this is the Hawkeye limited series, which is where he actually damaged his hearing. West Coast Avengers, though, is where that gets explored just a little bit more. But, quickly, the Secret Wars guys come back, and the Wasp, seeing how well Vision did without them there, she steps down because I think she's got Wasp matters to attend to. That makes it sound like she has to go pollinate flowers or something. I don't know what she has to go do, but it's not critically important for the plot. But what is critically important is that there has been a precedent set that there is only, I believe it was 7 members that can be on the main Avengers roster at the time, which obviously this is something that no longer exists at all, the 7 roster minimum type thing. Or sorry, I mean maximum. 7 roster minimum is probably the new rule, in fact. But you can probably see where this is going. Because of that, Vision is like, well, let's start a West Coast version of the Avengers, and Hawkeye, you're in charge. Which, that's a big deal for Hawkeye, and that's a pretty recurring theme in this book. The themes of leadership and responsibility and the struggle to prove yourself as a capable leader. And then also there's always sort of these like identity and belonging themes that present themselves in superhero stories naturally, but also especially superhero stories that are team-based like this. So now let's talk about who is on this team of West Coast Avengers. Well, we already know that Hawkeye is the leader, and of course, Mockingbird goes along with him, being his new wife, who I really, really like her as a character, and I've truthfully not read her in too much else, and this is where I was first introduced to her. But she is just super cool. She's intelligent, resourceful, she's got good fighter skills, good strategy skills, and husband and wife, superheroes, superhero team with eclectic personalities. There may be a little trouble in paradise at times in this omnibus, and the dramaticism of things like that in team books is always really appealing to me personally, at least. Then we have Wonder Man, who was also a very new character to me at the time, and again is one of those characters that I still don't know too much about. He is this kind of like charismatic Hollywood stunt man who struggles with self-doubt because he's not really sure about even going back into this life of superhero antics and whatnot. Then we have Tigra, who some people call Tigra, but I'm gonna have to challenge that as being incorrect because I really don't think it's right. We say tiger, not tiger, so we'll say Tigra, not Tigra. I think that logic is sound, but please correct me if I'm wrong. She's cool too. I found her very interesting, very feline character, obviously, but I mean physically and also in her personality. Part of her stuff in this is like that she's very susceptible to her instincts, and it's sort of a Wolverine adjacent in a way, although I think diluted. Well, I don't want to compare those two. It's you don't compare Tigra with Wolverine. I just mean extrapolating the am I more beast than man or more man than beast type thing, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit in this video, guys, but anyway, there's also Rhodey, who, has donned his own Iron Man armor in this. If you haven't read any like Rhodey Iron Man stuff, especially from this era, very different type of Iron Man than Tony Stark is, notably less flamboyant, I suppose, more pragmatic is what I'd say. Moon Knight later joins this team, which is also a very interesting character to add to this group because he's got a very complex personality and is, kind of more brutal or unorthodox than the other Avengers when it comes to his methodology and just his approach to like justice in general. I think one of the most enjoyable characters to read in this, though, is actually Hank Pym, aka, Ant-Man, Giant Man, Goliath, Yellow Jacket also, right? Yeah. Because he's stepped away from sort of the superhero identity part of this. He is just the team's sort of scientist. He kind of is their Jarvis. It's definitely positioned like scientific consultant to the West Coast Avengers, but it really reads just like Jarvis. And he's a character who at this time had fallen from grace, is trying to rebuild his life, is trying to find ways to contribute positively to the world, just struggling with that self-redemption. And it's kind of like a, hey, you don't define me, I redefine myself. I make my own amends for my past mistakes and actions. And when your goals are good, I think that's a good outlook. Now, a lot of stories in this first omnibus are sort of just about the formation of the team and also just sort of the growing pains of the team and whatnot. But there is also, Mephisto stuff, there's interesting Ultron stuff in here, and stuff more akin to, those classic comic book stories, classic Avengers stories, really. Not too groundbreaking in that regard, yet at least, but the characterization is really, really good. Alright guys, but let me know if you have read this material before, if you enjoyed it, and if you haven't read it, maybe go ahead and leave a comment saying that you do want to read this and that you would like to see this in omnibus format once again, because this is currently out of print, and I believe it has been for a long, long time, but hopefully, maybe Marvel could one day come across this video and see all your comments saying, yes, we're clamoring for it, we want West Coast Avengers. Who knows, but I am hopeful we'll see it reprinted one day again. Anyway guys, that's it for today. We are so close to 2,000 subscribers, so if you enjoyed this, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate you all and the community that we have built here. It's so positive, friendly, and intelligent. I always love hearing your guys' insights. So with that, have a great rest of your day.